Hello beauties, today we are duping the Vamp palette from Bella Beaute Bar. If that sounds good, let's jump in. As always, we're going to swatch every shade from the top to bottom, left to right. I'm going to give you a few recommendation alternative shades to some of the shades. And yes, beauties, I've literally just arranged these on my desk because all of my other magnetic palettes are occupied with another dupe in them. Let's get started. For duping our first shade, which is, yes, beauties, a matte black, my least favorite shade ever, I used Raven from Looxi Beauty, which I believe is the only matte black single that I have. The shade in the palette looks like it has red glitters in it, and I think I have a shade like that in one of my palettes, but I couldn't find it. But if you do have something to replace, you can always use that. To dupe our second shade, I picked one of the singles from Best Mattes palette from Bella Beaute Bar. And beauties, again, these shades are a lot deeper in person than what I see on camera. For this next shade, we have three options depending on which direction you want to go towards. Our first option is Ritual from Devinah. Your next option is Cherry from Glam Shop. And if you want to go very shifty and sparkly, you can use Hyperspace from Terra. Ritual is a beautiful purpley shade with a gorgeous shift of gold. I highly recommend this shade. It looks like it's made up of tiny glitter particles, but if it is glitters, it's mica based and it's safe for the eyes. Beauties, I do have a review of this collection, the Level collection. I'll link it here if you're interested. Cherry is just a deep burgundy shimmer with a shift of gold. And beauties, these shades always look lighter on camera than they are in person. Just keep that in mind. And of course, Hyperspace, which is shifty and shiny and sparkly. And I picked this shade because frankly, from the swatches of this palette, it's not easy to figure out what this shade really looks like. And I just wanted to give it a benefit of a doubt in case it's a very shifty multichrome. To dupe the fourth shade in this row, I used Berry Blitz from Looxi Beauty. Berry Blitz does have a little bit of a cool tone. It's not a true red. I actually don't have a true red single. If you know of any single that would go here better than this shade, let me know. The cool shift is more visible in the swatch. And beauties, this palette has a lot of shades in common with the Bejeweled palette from Bella Beaute Bar. That palette also has a red and a shimmery red and so on. So if you own that palette, definitely think about using some of those shades as dupes. To dupe the last shade in this top row, I chose a Volcano from JD Glow. Don't mind the fact that mine looks like it was attacked. Unlike Berry Blitz, Volcano looks like it is more warm toned than the shade in the palette. However, I don't really have anything that looks sort of cool toned and as glittery as that shade looks like in the swatches. Or if I do, my collection is too giant for me to easily be able to find it. I also wanted to use a shade here that would be distinctly different from the 10th shade I will swatch, which is the shade that's right under this one in the palette. To dupe the first shade in the second row, I chose Visions, also from JD Glow. This is a very metallic silver, kind of pewter shade. Don't forget that you could use the two shades that I picked for the two silvers in the palette interchangeably. For the second shade in this row, I chose Northeaster from Sydney Grace. For our next shade, I'm gonna give you all a couple of options. This is Midnight Violet from Looxi Beauty, which is a little bit more deeper than what looks like this shade should be from the swatches, and is also a more cool toned purple. Another option is Iffy, which is one of the shades from the Lilac You A Lot palette from ColourPop. I love reusing the shades that are in my ColourPop palettes. In case you're new and you didn't know this, all of ColourPop palettes are magnetic. With a magnet, you can pull out all of the shades and use them for making your own magnetic palette. And do not discount reusing some of these magnetic shades in ColourPop palettes for duping palettes that you like that you don't want to buy. This is the best way to get started with duping palettes without having to spend a lot of money on buying new shades. For the next shade in this row, I also picked a shade from the Best Matte palette of Bella Beaute Bar. This palette does not have shade names. Again, do not discount reusing and repurposing the shades in the pre-made magnetic palettes that you buy. For the next shade in this row, I chose two options. The top one is Ultraviolet from Looxi Beauty, and the bottom one is Tree Skirt, which was one of Cleona's regular shimmer shades a couple of years ago. From the swatch photos of this palette online, this shade looks like a metallic red to pink with tiny blue glitters, and Ultraviolet definitely gives that vibe. Ultraviolet is lacking a little bit of that red shift, but I wanted this shade to be different from the red shade in the first row. But True Skirt is definitely the metallic red to pink. It even has the tiny blue glitters. I'm doing this slowly so that you can see the blue glitters in this shade. Who knows, maybe Cleona considers bringing this shade back again this holiday season. To dupe the first shade in the last palette, I chose Thunderbird from Sydney Grace. You all know I love Sydney Grace mattes. And for the next shade, I chose Vine from Glaminatrix. And beauties, I mentioned earlier not to discount using some of the pre-made magnetic palettes that you already own. Particularly, we know all ColourPop palettes are magnetic. You could use some shades from Aurora Struck to dupe this palette. So if you have that palette and you wanted to dupe this one, keep that palette in mind. The middle shade in the bottom row looks like a super glittery blue to purple duo multichrome, and for this one I chose Multiverse, which is exactly that. It has a super glittery texture. It's a beautiful shade from Terra. Keep in mind, we never use unsafe glitters on our eyes in this channel. The next shade from the swatch looks like it has a purple shift to a green shift to a gold shift, and I thought chasing Comets from Terra would satisfy all of those shifts. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous shade. I'm hoping to be able to capture all of the shifts. Our last shade in this palette looks like a metallic white, for which I chose Starboy from Looxi Beauty. Starboy has a hint of teal. It gives it a little bit of a cooler tone, and I thought it goes better with all of the cool tone mattes, the blues, the purples, and the grays. This is the easiest way to see the gold shift, and then there is the teal shift. Beauties, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget a thumbs up before you leave. Let me know what palette you want me to dupe next in the comments below. And don't forget to check out my duping playlist that should show up on the screen about now. Have an amazing day, and until next time, bye!